African Wildlife Foundation was formed 50 years ago in 1961. The thing that strikes me is how far-sighted the founders were. Even when the organization was founded, they saw the essential link between wildlife and people. And that was embedded in the mission of the organization and the structure of the organization from the very beginning.
AWF has a kind of an interesting history. First with founders who I would say were visionaries, looking for a way to provide support and develop African leadership. The institution began to do more than individual species and general capacity building.
The opportunity that we see in Africa is that with foresight and planning, it would be possible for the modernization of African economies with a very significant wildlife resource still intact in these places that we call the African Heartlands.
Maasai Steppe Heartland, first of all, has always been regarded by AWF as the flagship heartland. Our critical core area of conservation is the Tarangire-Manyara ecosystem, and that is the area that links the protected area of Tarangire National Park and Lake Manyara National Park through Manyara Range, which is one of our showcases in the work that AWF has done in Tanzania.
AWF has been involved in a number of construction projects in this heartland, the visitor centers, the abattoir, and the new headquarters for Manyara Ranch. The construction of the school, the location was right in the corridor where animals pass.
The old school was an old, dilapidated building. The kids were crammed, I think 3 or 4 to a bed, and the conditions were appalling. A new school was built at a different location. That new school is now provided excellent facilities, the dorms, dining hall, beds which they sleep on. It has been a complete change, transformation of the school.
Manyara Ranch camp, by having a camp like this one, you'll have people around here, so the poachers also will be scared, and also the conservation of the area.
This place does not benefit only the wildlife, it also benefits the local communities here.
Women in the Maasai area are the most important part of the family, which the family depends on.
I work with communities, but my focus is more on the women. We actually work with what they have already, like the skills they have with the handcrafts business, basket business, and pottery business. I see a lot of success.
There's been considerable investment in Maasai Steppe over the years. We see fully functional parks, private land under conservation. We see corridors have been conserved. So I think it's a model of how landscape level conservation should look.
Africans have always been conservationists. AWF came with was to supplement what had already been there.
There are geniuses in these communities. Because of lack of schools in the district, high schools in the district, they have ended up in the river catching fish.
As an organization, we have to acknowledge that there is a cost to conservation. The costs cannot be borne by the poor communities who live in these areas on their own, and that the presence of wildlife imposes burden that is inordinately difficult.
We have been together with AWF in terms of sourcing funds for logistics and meetings, and at the same time constructing the office, including sourcing funds to construct the Machenje fishing camp.
We have been supporting Inyambo Community Development Trust to develop a commercial fish farm to support livelihood in the chiefdom. The purpose of this establishment was to promote conservation of fish. We have noticed that over the years there have been heavy depletion of fish stocks along the Zambezi River. The main source of livelihood is fishing.
This area at one time had a lot of animals.
And today we have very few animals. But with this approach that the AWF has brought in, we feel that our animals that had been depleted through poaching will come back.
6 rhinos were brought in, and from those 6, only 1 is surviving to date. The moment you leave the area, then people would move in. So here the support we have with AWF is in terms of maintaining these officers in the field for 24 hours and ensuring that there's eye contact on the rhino 12 hours in a day. Anyone who wants to visit Livingstone and wants to see the Victoria Falls would not want to go back without coming and see the white rhinos. Tourism in this country is no longer a social sector, it's an economic sector.
With the assistance of AWF, they have helped us to see that it's us ourselves who should be in front in terms of implementing our objectives. Because eventually, when they go, we'll be able to do everything for ourselves.
It's difficult to really conserve the wildlife and the wild forest where people inside or around the forest are very, very poor. Now you have the world. Everything is destroyed. There's no more roads. Can you imagine that in this century you have people even living without clothes? You have people even killing bonobos, eating wildlife, because for them that is the only source of food for them.
Many people were focusing on bushmeat hunting because of the collapsing of the infrastructure through which they could send their agricultural crops to the urban markets. What we then decided with AWF was we can focus on some hotspots for biodiversity like the Lomako forest, but at the same time we should invest in poverty reduction with the local communities. We have a boat project, a boat given by USAID to AWF, and this boat is now leaving Kinshasa to come upriver, the Congo River, the Lulonga River, the Maringa River and the Lopori River to give access to the market for the agricultural crops of these local communities. We come in with support for agriculture, with new germplasm and other equipment they need, that we will give them access to the markets, but they agree that they will limit their agricultural activities to a well-defined area. And they agree that they will not do slash and burn agriculture anymore out of these well-defined areas.
We start to really involve communities in the discussion to identify the threat of deforestation, the threat on wildlife.
The Lomako Reserve contains the best studied populations of bonobos ever.
There is so much more than just bonobo research. These research sites hold a lot of promise for Congolese nationals.
From the villages to the sunsets to the animals, it's all a most amazing, amazing place. With all the work that's being done in Africa, AWF is doing an amazing job.
I think the reason that AWF is so effective is that we're on the ground in our heartlands with skilled staff working with people so that they can protect and take care of their own wildlife and wild lands.
It's our obligation to make sure that what we have inherited, we can leave that for future generations. So when you conserve wildlife, you actually conserve yourself.
The people that work at AWF have such an honest approach to protecting the wildlife and work very closely with the African people.
So just a great deal of caring. The thing that impresses me the most is these people that are involved or involved tangentially really care.
This is an African organization that is actually going to represent the people as well as the animals and the conservation of the land.
Africa to me is like an old friend, a place that you have to go to return and continue the conversation over and over.
50 years is not anything to be sniffed at. Not many organizations last that long. I certainly anticipate that AWF will be there for many, many years to come, and I wish them the very best.
We have been very fortunate to have the African Wildlife Foundation as an institution which not only reminds us but also helps us to to carry forward the philosophy that man and nature can cohabit to mutual profit and to the advantage of the sustainability of our planet.